Hello, everyone, and welcome to this B2 Lead conversation. Today, we have an amazing guest, Tamara Gordon. Tamara, it is an honor to have you here, and welcome to this B2 Lead conversation.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure, and we did it at last. It was an adventure.
Mhm. Yes, for
And
sure.
without further ado, because I'm sure you have an amazing story to share, let me just start with a question, Tamara. And the first question would be, who is Tamara Gordon?
Okay, so
Just a
Tamara.
simple question to begin with.
So Tamara Gordon is someone who was born in Brooklyn, New York, to two parents who were blue collar workers. My mom was a nurse, and my dad was actually a conductor for the MTA in New York City. So my mom's journey was more of, years ago she got a job kind of as a candy striper and kind of grew into that role, but never really went back for school or anything like that. So I am the first graduate in my family to go on to go to
Mhm.
college, and then additionally to go on and get my master's degree. I chose to go to corporate America from by way of military. So I was in the
Wow.
Army Reserves for 10 years. And then I was a police officer through Rikers Island, working as a corrections officer, NYPD, for a couple of years. And then from there, I started my journey into the corporate world through finance and ended up in HR.
Wow.
So that's been my journey. And now I do total reward strategy and innovation for organizations.
So you do have a very diverse kind of experiences, it looks like.
Yes.
So if I asked you, if you look back now, you just said I ended up in HR. So I assume that this is not where you wanted to be. Was that a choice? So how come that you ended up? What happened that took you to where you are today?
So, as a mom, I do have five children. I have a blended family. And
Congratulations.
so I have four biological children and then one
Wow.
bonus son. And so, growing up, I was an actress. So, I wanted to act. I always wanted to be on Broadway and in television. And so, my college journey kind of took me that way. And that because I was in the military, I was being drafted to the Gulf War for Desert Storm,
Wow.
and I did not want to go. And so, in full transparency, I ended up intentionally getting pregnant and having my first child. And so that definitely derailed my opportunity to go. Into
Mhm.
acting. And so I was even recruited to audition for a different world, the role that Jada Pickett
Yeah.
Smith ended up having. And we had
Wow.
very similar styles, and my dad was like, you're not going to LA. So that was like put on the back burner.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
that's kind of how I ended up in HR. I also was interested in speech pathology after
Wow.
my dad had a stroke. I found it to be really interesting going with him to therapy, but from an application perspective, it was super boring in school. I was like, I can't. This does not keep me entertained. And so becoming like an assistant in different organizations within HR and being exposed to recruiting and talent acquisition now what it's called. And then the HR business partner side of the house, and then starting to work around compensation and never understanding compensation and getting frustrated when I couldn't have educated conversations. And so once I went into my master's program, found a little bit more about comp, I was like, I think I could do this forever. Like, I absolutely
Mm.
love trying to close the gap for women. I'm very
Mm.
frustrated to watch men come into organizations and make these great salaries, particularly white men. And then you see
Mm.
women, white, black, green, yellow, whatever background, not being paid. And so I said, I want
Mm.
to be the change. I want to be able to get into these spaces and have influence and pay people for what they're worth, regardless of gender or color. And so that's how I ended up in compensation.
Wow, very interesting. And if I understand correctly from what you are saying, it seems like that the forces that influenced you and made you decide, of course, they are always many and different. It seems like your family played an important role in the direction you have taken. You are tried when you needed to help your father, so you tried to take different routes, and while respecting somehow your family needs as well. I
Mhm.
also understand that you were discovering what you actually wanted to do. So it was, it seems, a combination of
Yeah.
respecting and honoring your family and looking for what I really am passionate about and what I am want to do. Is that correct, do you think?
That's very correct. So that's how my journey, right, and the military started. My entire family, all the way back to my great grandfather. With World War II, I had family in every single war that's ever presented itself here, and
Yeah.
so feeling like that's what the family does. We go into the military and then we become law enforcement. And
Wow.
so following that path and going and experiencing that journey, it just wasn't for me. And I knew I had to do something different. And then going to college, thinking I knew what I wanted, I was more of someone that needed to apply my skills versus sit and kind of read it, in a book. So while I successfully completed my bachelor's degree, it was really more through working at the same time and being able to apply those skills. And the same with my master's in HR. Once I was able to have and apply my experience, then I was like, I just became really passionate about the total rewards perspective of an organization.
And what did you find in throughout this process? What did you find that was most challenging for you?
I think most challenging as a woman is that when we do things, we do them because we feel like it's the right thing to do and not so much following the status quo. And so I've always been that person to kind of challenge, like, why are you doing it like this? Why aren't we looking at these roles the same? And, being trained in compensation by an employment lawyer, it just, actually an employment attorney, it just showed me a different way that no, this legal lens needs to happen first, even though it's HR. You always have to look at the impact to the people. And so just always being that person to challenge and admit when things aren't going right. And I remember one leader saying to me, a male leader, and he said, we were in a meeting and there's something that went wrong. And he said to me, you know, as a woman, it doesn't look good that you automatically admit you did something wrong. It makes you look weak.
Mm,
And I never forgot that. And so
mm,
that's something for me that I want you to be accountable. I'm very big on accountability, whether it's my children, whether it's friends, whether it's family, or whether it's coworkers and people who lead me. You need to be accountable, and it's okay to make mistakes because that's how we grow.
mm. Have you had role models or mentors that actually supported you in this process and actually that helped you and showed you maybe what it means to be accountable, and that's why you feel so strongly about it?
Yeah, I think very much growing up, I was allowed to make mistakes. My
Mm,
parents were very big on telling you why what you did was wrong, but being appreciative of you not hiding the fact that you were wrong.
mm,
And I think because I grew up in a way where it was a safe space to do so, I just continued that through my career journey. And so, like, one leader who actually introduced me to compensation, Carrie Ann Fournier, she was just, I teased her because I gave her a book called Beyond Rational Management, because she was the type of leader that even though you did something that needed to be corrected or constructive criticism for it, she always brought a positive light to that. Right. And she always
mm,
did it in a
mm,
safe space where it wasn't in her office. She would take you out to lunch or something and have that conversation and just kind of say, well, what could you have done better? Maybe you should consider it like this. And I think just taking that approach, because that was very early in my compensation career, and I've applied that everywhere I've gone. and just kind of grew and allow my team to now do, have that same experience.
Mhm. If you had to take us a little bit behind the scene, because not all women, particularly women, I would say, we are not used to allowing ourselves to make mistakes. So if you had to take us a little bit in Tamara's world, so what would happen inside of you when you did make a mistake and then you had to acknowledge that and maybe do something about it? What were the emotions, the thinking processes was happening inside of you, so that those of us who do not know how to make mistakes and not feel guilty, or not feeling that, oh, look at me, I'm not capable of anything, look at my mistakes, how was the process, a successful one, clearly, that you went through and that you can share with us?
I would say before experiencing that with that particular leader, it was me just kind of like internalizing, right, the mistake and feeling like I wasn't good enough, feeling like I wasn't going to be capable to move forward or grow or be promoted. And then having to take a step back and say, okay, what could you have done differently? And so applying that to whether it's a mistake in the email or any type of numbers, right? Or
Mm,
being able
mm,
to leverage peers to say, hey, can you review this for me before I
mm,
send it out? Or if I'm having a really bad interaction and attempting to respond in emotions, right? I would
mm,
type up everything, I would step away, and I would go back the next day and say, okay, I don't think I
mm,
really want to say this, and kind of course correct myself. So I think it's okay to feel guilty. It's okay to feel, like you're not good enough, but you can't sit there, right?
mm,
So one of the most recent experiences was when I was laid off from the NBA. I was devastated. It was a role that I was very excited about. I had moved my family from Houston, a place that we absolutely loved living, came back up here, and then the pandemic hit, and I lost the job, and I was devastated. I didn't want to get out of bed. And my mentor, Carrie Ann, called me and she said, you're probably sad. You're probably crying. You're probably feeling like you weren't worthy. She said, I'm going to give you 1 week to get through those emotions because you're entitled to them. But then after that, you need to get up. You need to
mm,
dust off your resume, think about all you've done, write down your accomplishments, and get back out there because that wasn't where you were supposed to be. You
mm,
are good enough. It's important for you to know you can get up. You're going to have things that knock you down, but they knock you down for a reason. And so that was really impactful for me because I could have easily just sat and sulked like, oh my God, I failed my family. I brought them all the way back up here, and you start to spiral. But now when I look back at it, it was the best thing that happened to me because honestly, my leader and I were very similar in experience and skills. And so for me to now leave and head up my own, you know, um, total reward space and being able to apply
mm.
strategy and partner with my leader, it's a much better setting for me.
Yeah. It seems like you have been, I don't know if lucky is the right word, but it seems to have a great mentor, right, that
Mhm.
supported you. Did you look for this mentor, or did this person just happen to be in your life? Were you proactive and saying, you know what, I really want to look for a mentor, for a role model, or just life presented these people to you?
It presented. So when I left the Rikers Island after being an officer for 2 years, I absolutely hated it. So when that ended for me, I actually went into a company, AXA. It was Equitable at the time. It was right around, right before 9/11. And so was at that company for 7 years. And I was an assistant. I worked, and back then you didn't really have too many dedicated HR spaces. You were helping with the recruiting, you were helping with, the onboarding and all of those different things. And so I thought I was going to retire there. I was like, oh, this is just what life is. This is where I'll be. And when the company was acquired by AXA, things took a turn, and I found myself accepting a package because they were relocating. I wasn't interested at the time. I'm taking a package and leaving. And so that propelled me to go back to school to get my master's. And when I was talking to my professor, he's like, you have so many questions about compensation. There are no real courses. Like, you have to go in and physically learn it. He said, maybe you should
Mm,
become an assistant. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going backwards to be an assistant again. And he's like, become an assistant to someone in comp. And so I got the opportunity to interview as an executive assistant at Marsha McLennan. And that's how I met Carrie Ann. She was my
mm,
leader, and she partnered me with an employment attorney who was in her department. And that's where the relationship grew and still flourished to this day. She's like really one of my good friends. And I do depend on her when I have a lot of questions, or if I'm thinking about something, I'm able to pick up the phone and give her a call.
mm. And so it seems like by you accepting to take this role that might have looked like a step backward, in fact, it opened up for you opportunities that
Yes.
you did not expect. So the humility of wanting to learn, it seems like it has been a very positive and winning choice for you.
Yes. Yes, it
Yeah.
has. Mhm.
Beautiful. And Tamara, if you look back now from where you are today, and you had amazing mentors and this lady that was a mentor for you, how would you describe your relationship with male colleagues? Because sometimes we hear that it is difficult, there are these differences, and we are a little bit tired also, I
Mhm.
would say, to keep thinking and hearing these, right? So how was your experience with male colleagues? Did you find that they were supportive, or would you recommend them if you look back now? Would you say, you know what, if you had done this or not do this, it would have been different for me? How was your experience with your male colleagues?
So overall, I've had positive experiences with male colleagues. One thing that, like, one situation that kind of stands out for me was when Carrie Ann was actually promoted to a new role, and we got a new leader. He was pushing me to go to school. So here I am, and I look back at this. I said this to my husband the other day. I look back and say, you don't know what you don't know, right? And sometimes if someone is telling you something, it would be helpful for them to explain why it's important. So I'll say, I had just graduated with my master's, and the leader is like, well, you need to now go to school for these courses. And so in my mind, I'm like, but I'm in school. Like, why would you send me back to school? What I wish he would have said to me was, Tamara, if you think you want to be a compensation professional, there are specialized courses that you can take and become certified as a comp
Mm,
professional. This is why
mm,
we want you to take these courses at World of Work, as opposed to just saying, well, you need to go back and take these courses. And I just felt like, well, that doesn't make sense. So I'm leaving. And I ended up
mm,
resigning from the role and then going and doing my own consulting
mm,
thing in different
mm,
organizations in different
mm,
industries to build my HR and comp experience that way. But I didn't know what it would. Didn't know what he was talking about.
mm.
Um,
So
so context is important. That's what I will say to my male counterparts. Context is important.
and it seems also that perhaps a curiosity to and curiosity and interest in actually exploring a little bit more what could be something that pertains to you, what you would like. Maybe you are already taking a course, so
Mhm.
actually taking an interest in and learning more about you and what you were doing perhaps
Right.
would have helped from what
Yes.
you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
So, what would be a suggestion that you have if there are some male leaders, some men that are in business, in corporations, in professions? So what would you suggest to them that could do differently in order to facilitate a different kind of relationship with colleagues, female colleagues in leadership? What would you say? Maybe one feedback that you would
So,
give them.
one feedback as a mother in the workplace would be always offer the opportunity. Because I know younger in my career, there was a lot of interactions with men and even women who didn't have children, in all honesty, where situations happen where your child wakes up sick, they just don't feel well, and so it kind of sets you back a little bit, right? Because you kind of have this routine, and now your kid is sick, you have to figure out other options for them, and so when you show up late, it's not the reprimanded, oh, you're late again, and making you feel like you're wrong for trying to take care of your kid. It should be, hey, is everything okay? How can I help you? How can I support
Mm,
you in this situation? Do you need, and this is for
mm,
like when I was more of a non-exempt employee, but like, do you need to change your hours? Is there a way we can flex? Do you need to come in late? Or just have the
mm, mm,
conversation as opposed to saying, hey, you've been late this many times and it looks like there's an issue with you getting into the office. And I think
mm,
that's
mm.
very unfair. And that's
Yeah.
for males, men who have children as well. They experience the same thing. So it's just parents in the workplace.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a compassion and an empathy there, and then
Mm,
also understanding that we express ourselves differently. So where we may continue a conversation, a man will say, oh, you're just being so emotional. It's not emotional. Emotional will mean that I'm taking this personally, right? As opposed, no, I'm passionate about this topic, so can we just speak to the facts?
mm,
Ask about the facts. Don't automatically say, oh, you're just being emotional. That's very
mm,
disrespectful, especially for women, because we're
mm,
always told, oh, you need to keep your emotions in
mm,
check or something like that.
mm. So again, it sounds to me like really take an interest in learning more about the person you are interacting with, the person you are collaborating, if it is your direct report, if it is your colleague, but really take an interest in understanding, as you mentioned before, the context, because there
Yes.
are many things that are going on behind the scenes. You have kids, they get sick, and there is a lot that is happening. And so taking an interest in learning more about this would allow for better results for both
Yes.
parties. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you said you have four kids plus one, correct? Did I get it correct? Where you call it a bonus?
Yes, my bonus son. Yes.
Yes. And so are these sons and daughters? Is a mix,
It's
Tamara?
a mix. So I have three daughters. I have one, my son is the youngest, he's only 10. And then my bonus son is 21.
Beautiful. So you do have a representative group
I do. I
there.
do college
So
grads and then high school and elementary.
wonderful. So this question, you will love it. So what would you tell to each one of them at the different age they are in? What would be one suggestion that you give to them so that they can grow and develop and create their career in the best possible way? What
Mhm.
one feedback or suggestion would you give them in the different ages they are in?
Yeah. So for well, I always tell my kids don't suffer in silence, because I find even with my employees where there's been times where they don't know something, so they quietly try to figure it out instead of saying, "Hey, I don't know. Can you help point me in a direction?" So suffering in silence is something I would tell all of them never to do. My older children who are out of college, I would say fail forward. Um,
Mm,
don't sit and wait for what you think is your perfect opportunity. Try different things, because you never know where your passion will show up if you don't try it. And then my younger children, I would definitely say it's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn, that's how you grow, but always be accountable for those
mm,
mistakes. Don't push it
mm,
off on, oh, well, if the teacher would have done this, or if this person would have. Be accountable for what part you played in it, and give
mm,
people grace, because
mm,
everybody doesn't know, and let people know how they made you feel,
mm.
because sometimes the intent is not negative always, and people don't know what they don't know.
Absolutely. Beautiful. And what would you say to your youngest self? If you look back at the beginning of everything, what would you tell your younger self today?
Mm.
Sorry, this is
That you are, that's a good one, that you're stronger than you think. The resilience, the opportunity to grow and change, will make you more of an asset in in life in general, whether it's personal or professional. Um, and that small time in the military definitely built your resilience to know you can't take things personal, because business is never personal. Um, and that it's okay to be different, and it's okay to speak up and use your voice, as long as you do it in a way that, it's intention is to be positive, right? And not this negative, like yelling and screaming, but always don't be afraid to speak up.
those are wise words, and I think that your younger self would would have been very happy to hear those
Because my
words in
younger
the
self
past.
was so shy and quiet and introverted, afraid of her own shadow.
Well, definitely she grew and she has flourished.
Yes.
Tamara, I have one last question for you.
Sure.
What would you say to women in leadership today? What could we do differently that would make situations we're in, relationship we people we interact with better? What would you say to us all?
I would say we are in this together. And as we meet people, even if that person knows more than you, which we hope you continue to meet people who know more than you, that you embrace that and you leverage that, and you don't become jealous, envious, or angry of that, because we are fighting to break the glass ceilings and continue to have representation at the top of the house. And we can't do that if we constantly look at each other as competition.
Beautiful. Thank you. I take these also for myself. A beautiful, beautiful suggestion.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Tamara.
Thank
How
you.
can people find you if they are interested in what you do, if they want to learn more about you, where they can find you? What's the best way to connect with you?
So I'm definitely on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn
Mhm.
person more than Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. I know I should be more into technology, but it's too much mess there, so I'm not. But I'm on LinkedIn. My
Beautiful.
Tamara Gordon, and you can find me. I'm currently working at PVH, corporate organization for Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein. And so that's my current home. So yes, always reach out to me. I like to do, seminars and different things like that. So you can also catch me talking wonderful things about compensation and how we need to be paid fairly as women.
That is another very important topic, right? We need to learn to become capable of earning
Yes.
as much. Very
Yes.
beautiful. Thank you so much, Tamara, for this amazing sharing, for your time. It has been a pleasure to have you here. And hopefully, we will hear more about you and we will follow you on LinkedIn. So, thank you so
Thank
much for
you
being
so
here.
much. Thank you. Take care. Be well.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.